This meeting is being recorded.
And we're back. But for you, we never left. But back here we are with the writer and director of the film Katernica, which I had the pleasure of watching and reviewing few weeks ago, at any rate. With me, of course, is the fellow who was with us just minutes ago. James Newton is still here, although if I'm looking at my screen, I believe the order of the individuals has changed slightly. So now Pete is just below my spot, but he's game to discuss movies and such. And of course, our talent guy is going to be asked the probing questions that he's hopefully will come to expect now that he has a second feature length under his belt. Hello, James, and welcome back, everyone.
Thank
you. Katernica. There are a lot of things going on with this, so I will start with a somewhat broad and open kind of question. Can you describe the genesis of this project? Because there's a story you're telling, there are a lot of things you're referencing, and a lot of what's going on. And so I think it might be best if you laid some groundwork for our viewer listeners who might not yet be familiar with the movie in question, which is Katernica.
Yeah. I mean, the storyline, if for want of a better phrase, is about a play, a lost one-act play, written in Germany in the 1930s, which seems to have a strange effect on everyone who comes across it. And it's about the main plot line. You can tell by the way I'm stumbling. I've never been asked to describe this film before, right? The main plot line is a young theatre student who's searching for this play. She happens upon this play and she's trying to find more information about it. And the one person she finds who knows something about it is this washed-up actor and former television director. Her sister's also an actor, and the main character wants to put her sister in a performance of this play, which is called Katernica. And it sets off a few events and happenings, and that's about all I can say in terms of the plot. Not because I'm trying to be mysterious, but that's because that's all there is to it, really. Right?
And
it doesn't go any further than that. And I'm not. I said on the commentary for the Blu-ray when I was putting that together, I was asked to do a commentary on it, and I was trying to drum up 75 minutes worth of conversation to fill the running time of the film. And I'm not really interested in plots. I never have been. I don't think I'm very good at putting it together. I'm interested in art. So it's just, I like to have a jumping off point with which I can explore different ideas within a framework. So that framework of the play that may well be cursed and negatively affects the people it touches is the framework to explore a series of ideas. And that's the plot, and that's the way the film unfolds. The genesis of the story was, it was built out of two different ideas. An idea that I had, which was for a sequel to my previous film called Black Lizard Tales. I mean, I was being a bit ambitious there, given the fact that not many people saw that at all. It wasn't worthy. It wasn't commercially pressed on me to do a sequel. Let's put it that way, right? But I was going to follow the themes that I'd been exploring in that film. And then my co-writer for Katernica, who's also in the film, plays the character of Jerry, Paul Richards. He'd come up with a film script called Katernica, which had this core idea but was very different. So I took elements of his script, put it together with elements of my script, and come up with the Katernica that you've had the pleasure of seeing.
Ah.
Okay, well, you have described in the movie proper, you've given away maybe the first 5 minutes. So
yes. Yeah, I guess I have. Yeah. That is the plot. I mean, I have this thing where I like to get the plot out of the way in the first 5 minutes of the film. So I'll have two characters talking, tell the audience what's going to happen, and what the backstory is, and then we can get on with it. That's the structure I like.
Good. Yeah. So this let's start with shall we say the hook. This lost play. Now, considering the subject matter of Katernica, certainly, I'm going to guess you are well versed in the world of stage.
Yeah, I have some experience in that way, and the my co-writer Paul as well. He's mostly an actor, so he has some experience in that, and I know a lot of actors, particularly ones who are at the kind of level of that we're working on at the moment. Some success here; they're professional actors, but a lot of them have day jobs, and so part of it was built around the experiences that I'd seen and heard there of going to auditions and having to audition, and the idea of kind of like ambitions, but wasted dreams or wasted talent, or maybe people never had talent in the first place, but what does that matter really? Yeah, that was a thing that I was exploring at the time. This film within the film, the play within the play.
Yeah, because the notion of the cursed one-act play from pre-Nazi Germany, that sounds like, like something that would circle around, dramatic societies. Is that, is that like actually a legend, so to speak, or is this a conjuration that just was put to hook everything that you wanted to explore with it?
I don't believe so. That section of the script came from Paul. So and he'd written that however many months before I managed to relook at his manuscript and cannibalize what I liked out of that. And I've never bothered to ask him whether it was based on a true story. I took what I wanted from it, and that's good enough for me, really.
And I will presume that what you took was gladly given by the fellow in question, seeing as he shows up in the movie that you've done.
Yeah, it's a kind of strange collaboration, really. Because when I say that it was taken from history, I think the character of the director that he was playing was taken from another one of his scripts. So I took this kind of core idea from Katernica, and I liked the title, and another character from another script that he'd written, which the last time I talked to him, actually, he said he'd forgotten he'd written that. So I had to remind him of it. And then I fitted it together with what I was doing, and it became a kind of patchwork fitting together of the script. And I wrote it in about 3 days. But remember, about kind of great stretches of it are were lifted from these scripts that Paul had written. And it's the way we've written before. The way we tend to write. It's he will write a script, I'll rewrite it, then he might rewrite it again, and then we kind of leave it at that. Or it might even be he writes one scene, then I write a following scene, give it to him. He writes the scene that comes after that. And that's the way we tend to collaborate. We used to be in bands together. So our songwriting used to be quite like that. I do the lyrics, give it to him. Whatever music he came up with, that was it. We like that kind of organic approach. And Katernica was just another example of the way that it was built through work that we'd been doing. It wasn't with an aim in mind, like we want to explore these themes, so all of these things have to happen. It's like, what have we got? I'm very confident that we put this together, we'll be able to explore the themes that we like within this. So, for example, in the film, there's a sequence where the character of Jerry, that Paul plays, does an audition, and he's asked to audition a character that he's been coming up with, and I came up with the idea of this character performing an audition, and I said to Paul, I've got this scene, your character performs this audition for this kind of theatre company who are putting on a play. I need you to perform this character on stage as if it's your audition piece. I didn't know what that was going to be. I sent it to Paul, and then 2 days later, I don't think even 2 days later, actually, it might have even been about 20 minutes later, he comes up with this character.
The miner, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's called the Gluttonous Master in the film, but he's got that kind of minor. Yeah,
Well, it's I believe he's holding a little pickaxe.
that's exactly what it is, and he's got the line about going down the pit as well. So it's absolutely in mind. So that's well spotted on that one, Joel. And I wasn't expecting it to be that. Now that character is based on a real person. So that character is based on a person who used to hang around Paul's village, who'd kind of lost his mind in
yeah,
being a miner, yeah, doing coal mining. So that was based on a particular character that Paul knew growing up.
Okay. Yeah, no, I went into Katernica pretty much totally blind and haven't really, I really only have the movie and now your recent remarks. You mentioned being in a band with this effectively a collaborator fellow, and before in the earlier segment you mentioned the interest in sound. And I do believe when we were in our email conversation, when you shared another screener link with us to get us up to speed, you said the only thing that might be different from what I saw was the sound. So sound is obviously very important to you here, and there's a bit that goes on in this movie with the sound. I wonder if you might talk about what it is you're doing and your process for it, because this is obviously at least as important as what we're seeing.
Yeah, do you mean throughout the film or in a
Yeah,
particular?
as you approach cinema simultaneously, audio, to the same extent as visual, is what I'm kind of getting here.
Yeah, I mean, in definitely in certain scenes, and maybe later, if there's time, I'll talk a little bit about the new film that should be coming out by the end of the year, where the sound's possibly even more important than in Katernica. But I think it's just a way of. I mean, you hear a lot of people say that sound is as important as the image. I'm sure it is at some stage. I think there's something that they become indelibly linked. I think in the what Michael Sheon, the sound theorist, would say is that it kind of embodies sound, gives body to the image.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
And so, but what I like to do, particularly in a film like Katernica, where the sounds aren't necessarily always what we might expect, they don't necessarily have fidelity to what we are seeing on screen. So nearly all of the sound in Katernica, I think, is built in post-production, with the exception of the dialogue. So if you hear footsteps, the footsteps aren't necessarily from that environment. If it's the person walking onto a stage, it might not be those shoes, that plank that they're walking on. It might be they're walking on a hard floor. Or it might be me doing it, wearing completely different shoes to the character that we're actually seeing on screen. So there's a kind of, I suppose, a disconnect between the images that we're seeing and the sound that we're hearing. Now, that lack of fidelity there between what we see and what we hear might not be noticeable instantly by the audience, but I think it lends a kind of sense of the uncanny to what we see, or it can do. Not always. A lot of times, what audiences do is they look at they look at the image, they see the sound, they just assume that the sound is coming from the image that they're seeing, whereas not always. And if I can go back to a bit of film theory again, that Shion talks about, that the example that he uses in one of his books, I think it's Audio Vision, the book is called, is there's a scene in Terminator 2 where Sarah Connor is running down the corridor. She's escaping from the mental hospital and she's barefooted. But when she walks down the corridor, she runs down the corridor, even though she's barefooted, the sound is of clip-clopping high heels on hard floor, right? But you don't notice it, as if you don't even second guess it. because you see her feet running. The sound is not the sound of bare feet on the floor. There's the sound of hard shoes on the floor, and so you just put the two together. I don't know whether this is answering the question or not, other than to say is that the sound is obviously really an interesting and a hugely creative area with which I like to explore. I have to say, on top of that, I'm not the best sound recordist, or it's not like I'm a brilliant technician in that regard. A lot of the time, it's just recording it the best that I can, getting a sense of how it might sound. But very often I get somebody, a technician who's working on the film to come and listen to it for me or help me to mix it better. And even though I've been in bands, I'm an appalling musician. And I was looking, but I know people who are better musicians. And the music for Katernica is created by Paul's brother Mark, who is a kind of genius musician. And so what I tend to do is bring together is telling the kind of thing that I'm looking for, and he'll come up with the music, for that, or he might provide some background sound for me, and then I can. So there's a real collaborative element of it. Yes, that's more like it.
Now, Pete, if you care to elaborate for those of us who don't have the pleasure of watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. What were you just showing to our guests?
I was just pulling some music books off the shelf behind me because I blog a lot about music, and that's been one of my gigs. However, Mr. Newton, you have some books out there yourself, do you not? That you have authored?
Yes, that's true. I do.
Yes.
I have
and
two.
There's one about exploitation movies, as a matter of fact. Oh wow, I love you already. All right. That's it was called Mad Max something. After Mad Max, post Mad Max, the Mad Max syndrome. What was it? What was it called?
It's the book's called The Mad Max Effect.
The Mad Max Effect. Right. All right.
It's about.
Well, I'll be sure to get that one.
Yeah, sure. It's relatively decently priced. I think it's academic publishing, but the paperbacks, it's a decent price. Even if I do so myself.
So it's academic. You mean it's intended for university material, not just?
Well, not really. I mean, it's in the sense of it's academic publishing, but I like to try and write it in as an accessible style as possible. What I'm saying is, if you buy the hardback version, it's something like £90 or however many dollars.
£90, okay.
If you buy the paperback version, it's £20, right? Which is obviously
And of course,
anyway,
I guess
it's all about music, because both of you have now been involved in some kind of band at the point, right? Anyway,
is that are you in a band? Oh, but me, or did you mean
both
me?
of you? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've that's how we kind
you
of
mentioned the band, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is going back a long time, and I played bass guitar in the band with Mark and Paul, and it was kind of garage, punky rock, bluesy rock stuff.
Funky bluesy rock stuff. Got it.
Yeah, but it's going back a long time, and since then we get together very, very occasionally. We might do some music if we need some music for a film, or more commonly, I'll ask his brother to produce some music for me, and he's done the music for my last 3 films. So.
All right. Okay.
Well, glad. Yeah. Thank you for calling that from thank you for drawing that from our guests there, Pete. And while you were having that exchange, I suppose we can mention that there is a JamesEdwardNewton.com that.
There is, except I will be closing that website soon.
Oh.
And,
check it out while you can. JamesEdwardNewton.com is about to be closed.
I'm going to close it for this for the reasons I think everything just becomes unwieldy. It's got material on there that's quite old. I think the best thing to do is to go to my YouTube or the Vimeo, and
that is the direction the kids are headed these days, and that's why we're doing this podcast this way. So we got that's I like the scattershot approach there, because that's covered a lot of ground kind of quickly. I'm going to draw us back to the movie Katernica. Now, I drew a number of things from it. checking it out on IMDb, I can see that it is woefully underviewed so far, such that there is one critic review available, and it's mine, which I always feel a little awkward when that's the case, but I do have a number of good things and possibly insightful ones. This is it's not the longest movie, but it does have a lot of the interesting things going on. It has that minor sequence. It has that your own personal exploration into sound and potential uncanny valley there. And I do want to at least take a moment while I remember to inquire about perhaps one of the uncanniest movie characters I've ever seen, certainly at all recently, in the form of, I guess he's a producer, maybe, in the movie. He's also some sort of entity with motives not entirely clear. He's a guy referred to as Mr. Case. And
That's
I'm
correct.
wondering if you might be able to discuss, and at least for my sake, illuminate a little bit about just what is up with Mr. Case, and also in regards to the fellow who performed as Mr. Case, which I believe was Tony Martin.
That's correct. It would be really awkward at this point, wouldn't it, Giles, if this is just the way Tony is in real life? But and he's got some form of condition but that's not the case, right? He's a very, very normal, average person, and he's yeah. So I wouldn't want to give too much away, other than to draw attention to your own words here, where you said that he wants to. It's almost as if he wants to get out of his own skin, and the way I again, I don't want to give anything away, and it wasn't necessarily written with this is the intention that he's an alien, because the character isn't an alien. But the way I described it in the script, and the way I described it to Tony when we were discussing how to perform this character, was as if he is an alien who's come down and doesn't understand human communication, right? And he's somehow what we see on the outside of him is not the real him, and the real him is inside. Hence why he's being given fed his lines by this other character, and he struggles to verbalize and get his words out. That was about as much direction as I gave Tony, and after that, and Tony Marden is an actor who's very familiar from the kind of British no-budget horror scene, of which I suppose I'm part. And he's also making his own film called Witches of the Sands, which is he's been making now for 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years, but it's his own particular vision. But with Tony, as an actor, you just kind of wind him up and you let him go, right? And that's why he's cast. That's why I cast him. He's a person that you get in to deliver a particular type of performance, and he's an actor with a lot of range. But when you give him this free rein, he can really dig into and understand the tone of what it is that you're looking for. And so I knew he was perfect for this role. But what was really interesting about it was, because these films are made for virtually nothing. We don't really have a rehearsal process apart from a couple of Zoom meetings and a couple of phone calls. And when I went to meet him before we were due to shoot this, he'd written the exact same notes that I had in my head on his own script, which were virtually the same, interestingly, which is what you picked up on in your review about him, struggling to get out, being extremely uncomfortable in his own skin. And that was that was it. After that point, I just want to see him perform it.
Yeah.
Then it's a question of upping it or taking it down. There was a couple of moments, I think, where particularly in the hospital scene, where I had to ask him to tone it down slightly, just so we could get some of the plot across.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
but that's what you do with actors, right? Oftentimes I cast them because I know they're going to deliver roughly what I want them to deliver anyway, and then it's just a question of saying go a bit further, pull it a little bit back, tuning it exactly. Yeah, and Tony I've worked with now 3 times, and I've done a bit of assistant directing on his film Witches of the Sands, which when it finally gets finished, you might be interested in. It stars a whole host of people who've been in horror films from the past, like Ian McCulloch from Zombie Flesh Eaters, Linnea Quigley is in it.
Linnea Quigley.
Yeah, all sorts of different people. If you look down the cast, I mean, it's quite it's kind of lots of people who've been cast members from old horror films from the 70s and 80s, you know, from Hammer horror.
Right up my alley. I practically live and breathe horror films from the 70s and 80s.
Okay, yep. Oh, well, ain't this something? Witches of the Sands, directed by Tony Martin. I see the page now. It's got Tony Martin, of course, Deborah Lynn, Linnea Quigley, Donnelly Heising, Lloyd Kaufman, Lynn Lowry. Okay, yep. Ian McCullough.
From drama films?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He stars as producer of distinguished horror movies. Okay. Well, that sounds absolutely fascinating and is now officially on our radar. Okay, yeah, because I devoted a paragraph to that character because I think there are three levels of mysteriousness in Katernica. There's the sort of base one where you have the go-getter grad student theater, the young woman who, stumbles across this, mysterious, dangerous script. And the sort of flip side of her, but still fairly normal, is the Jerry character to start with. And then you have the pregnant sister and her foil, well, for lack of a better understanding of what's going on, the nurse character. And then then there's this peak with Mr. Case and his involvement and his ultimate ambitions, which may or may not have come true. There's some confusion to be had there that I have every reason to suspect is intentional. Now, this sort of, this fusion of very workaday theater and very opaque supernatural. Now that, I've seen theater movies and, I've seen opaque supernatural movies, but this combination, and as you've mentioned any number of times, low budget, I'm going to say the one number I've seen thrown around for this was somewhere around $1,000, might be £1,000, I'm not sure. And it's the kind of thing that I find reassuring, and I'm going to try to deliver this in the right way. I'm always very pleased when I see such a number and such a result, because I am heartened at what can be done by creative people who are effectively in this to tell their story. As you said yourself, also, you made a sequel without anyone asking you to. And so this was obviously, an ambition of yours to keep going with this exploration of themes you had. And that's really, I think, maybe the best way to look at Katernica is an exploration of themes, because there is a story or three going on there. None of which...
Well,
yeah, you interrupt me, please. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
No. I'm begging you. Start talking.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, there was the way I would see this, and the way I see all my films, and people ask me to explain the way the plot is delivered, if they think it's maybe too, as you say, opaque or obtuse, or coming from an angle that doesn't make much sense, is that it makes sense to me. And if I may just deviate very slightly, it's a really kind of got a nice metaphor. There's Alex Cox, of course, who directed Repo Man and things like that. And he wrote a book called 10,000 Ways to Die, which is about spaghetti westerns. And in that, he's in the introduction to that, and he says, you know, the old John Wayne movies now never meant much to us when we were children, but you know, when we were teenagers growing up in Liverpool, the kind of what felt like the utter kind of surreal randomness of spaghetti westerns, you know, just seemed to make sense to the life that we lived in Liverpool, where, you know, where random violence would happen. When you're young, world doesn't seem to make sense. And I think I wasn't brought up in Liverpool, but I was brought up in a kind of similar a town in Wolverhampton in the 1980s, and the world doesn't always figure the way dovetail together the way that it does in movies, right, or in stories. And I've always been interested in the way that things seem to appear to be, I don't like the word, but random or random chance in the way that things come together. To me, without wishing to sound pretentious, there's nothing unusual in the structure of Katernica and the way all the different characters fit together. I can see and appreciate, however, if you're not looking at it through my eyes, then then it doesn't follow the structure of what we would expect narrative cinema to follow. There's no cause and effect chain where we understand these set of motivations and actions because they're a result of these motivations and actions that are from these characters. But then that's also life to me, and so I like those gaps and I like those leaps where that just seems to be the way that life unfolds for most of us. In some respects, the way that it leaps and moves and shifts, it may seem dreamlike if we're looking at a film, but if we compared it to our own lives, it would make a hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been sat in my office now for several hours, right, and I can't remember what happened for the last 4 hours when but somehow 4 hours has gone by, and at the time it felt like things were happening. Now I can't even remember what I was doing. So I think it makes sense to me, and I think, but I can appreciate how if you were used to the cause and effect chain of traditional narrative cinema, then it might appear as if it's doing something strange.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that much more eloquently there. Obviously, I will admit a considerable lack of understanding, shall we say, of yeah, the logical chains as you mentioned there, but I'm also utterly untroubled by not understanding. This is your movie, borrowed a little bit from your buddy, of course, with his blessing and collaboration there. But yeah, it's the kind of thing that I know several people whom I'm friends with that this movie would absolutely infuriate, because they very much enjoy the linear progression of logic of action to reaction to, you know, so on down the sequence. Whereas smarter people may get more from what you're doing here and what other directors who have this, shall we say, approach. But I don't mind not getting something so long as what I'm seeing I find compelling.
Yeah, I think
Giles, no one is smarter than you, Giles. No one.
And also, don't forget, you know, like this is me as an artist and a creator. That's not necessarily what I'm always watching. You know, I mean, I like nothing more. I put on a Canon Charles Bronson films, right? I might put one on when I get back tonight, right? I like nothing more than narrative cinema. But it's not the only kind of like show in town, is it? And I think I've always approached it again. This idea of like art, like music, like film, they kind of blend into each other. We don't expect music to make sense. We don't expect abstract art necessarily to make sense. I don't even know if we expect representational art to make sense. It just is, and we accept it on its own terms. And it's never been it was never a question to me until you start presenting in front of other people. And you were talking, the word identity cropped up a little bit in the first part of the show earlier, and I wonder whether there's an element there where how like you don't understand yourself until you see somebody else sees you and reacts to you, right? It's like a child growing up, right? You're utterly conscious, right? It's what Adam and Eve's about, right? This coming together of the birth of the ego, right? And all of a sudden we see ourselves reflected in something, and oh no, now we're ashamed. And I think there's an element of that to the kind of this filmmaking and this art, this creation of moving image, where it's only when you put it against what's so-called normal that you start. Hang on a minute, maybe this isn't. But I'm learning to get over that reticence and to that. I'm learning to get over that shame, I think. And one thing I tried to do with Katernica was push all the way through that, and not worry too much about whether it made sense narratively. Because then you go down all sorts of routes. Then, oh, now I've got a film. Oh, I've got a fucking filmer turning up at the theatre. Now I've got to do an establishing shot. So you've got to go. Now you've got to do these linking scenes that link all these scenes together, and it's before you know it, you're filming a load of stuff you don't want to film and you don't, you don't really care about. That's the way. Another factor here. I always love what Monty Python said was, "How do we finish this? How do we finish this sketch?" Well, we'll just cut here, right?
Cut here, footfalls. It's good. All right. Well, we are speaking of finishing sketches. We are running out of time, so a couple questions before we wrap up. Do you have any? You mentioned some collaborations and the like. Do you have any current film projects or other things you'd like to plug right now or talk about briefly?
Yeah, in a couple of weeks' time, I should be having a new short film out, which is about 8 or 9 minutes long, which I'm just editing and finishing the sound, funnily enough, right now, and the grading. So that'll be out on my YouTube in a couple of weeks' time. And by the end of the year, my new feature film called When the Sun Stands Still, which is another collaboration with Paul, and also features Tony as well. It should be coming out, and that's very briefly. It's about a young woman who's 20 years old who goes missing, and the search for her. But like Katernica, that's just the starting off,
and then it'll fall off somewhere delightful. I'm sure. Excellent, cool. All right. And I guess, yeah, before we totally wrap up, there's one question at 366 we like to ask all our interview victims here. Could you tell us what your hometown is, and can you recommend a restaurant there?
The hometown where I was brought up was Wolverhampton, and I can't the Dilshad Indian restaurant would be the one I would recommend there. I currently live in Canterbury, which is in Kent, in the UK, and yeah, there's a restaurant called the Pig, which is very nice.
The Pig in Canterbury in Kent. That is fantastic. And there's a pig. Oh, it's an action pig. Nice. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm a little out of it, but I very much enjoyed our conversation here. We've been chatting with excuse me. We've been chatting with James Edward Newton, filmmaker and otherwise man about town, whose Blu-ray release of Katernica is available with a feature-length commentary, apparently. So nab that, give it a look. Thank you very much, James. And Pete, thanks for riding along shotgun.
Thank you. And once again, thank you very much for the review. Thank you very much for reaching out to me. And thank you for inviting me onto your space. And I hope that was worthwhile. I hope your listeners and viewers get something from that and enjoy it.
And thank you for your very candid and eloquent glimpse into your creative process there when you're describing that. That's always fascinating stuff.
Not at all. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.